Hello and welcome to the Poetry Exchange. I'm Michael Schaefer. If things are sounding a little bit different for you this month, do not adjust your headsets. I'm in a storeroom in a hostel in Bangkok. It's quite noisy outside and I'm improvising. I'm really excited to bring this episode to you this month. This is a conversation that features a dear friend of the project, Nick Makoha. He's been a fantastic supporter of the Poetry Exchange for a long time now. And in fact, it was a long time ago that we recorded this conversation, and for one reason or another, it's taken us a while to get around to putting it out there, but I'm really, really pleased that we are. This is also a conversation that features our dear Fiona, and it's just been wonderful to listen back to her as well, and her great intelligence and sensitivity and depth of perception. So as I said, it was a long time ago we spoke to Nick. In fact, it was back in 2017. We recorded it at Pushkin House. This was not long after Nick's first collection, Kingdom of Gravity, had been published, and just to note that his second collection, The New Carthaginians, is going to be out on February the 27th, and it's published by Alan Lane. But before we get into this month's episode, I did want to tell you about a really exciting event coming up. On Wednesday, the 26th of February, there's going to be a live event celebrating the release of Fiona's collection, On the Brink of Touch. I love that title. It's going to be on at the Bedford in Balham, South London. And if you're not able to get there physically, it will be live streamed. You'll be able to get all the details for where you can get tickets and the link for the stream on our website, thepoetryexchange.co.uk. The event is being put on by Live Canon, who have published On the Brink of Touch, and it's been set up by Fiona's poetry mentors, Tamar Yoselef and Glyn Maxwell, of course with the support of John Preble and myself and everyone at the Poetry Exchange. It would be lovely to see you if you can make it there, and if not, it would be lovely if you can join the live stream. So you'll be hearing Fiona and John Preble talking about White Egrets by Derek Walcott, the poem that's been a friend to Nick.
You got some copies?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the one I go to the most. It's the first poem in Derek Walcott's book. I mean, I have a lot of his work, but this is just a perfect example.
Will you read it for us?
Sure. The chessmen are as rigid on their chessboard as those life-sized terra-cotta warriors whose vows to their emperor with bridle, shield and sword was sworn by a chorus that has lost its voice. No echo in the astonishing excavation. Each soldier gave an oath, each gave his word to die for his emperor, his clan, his nation, to become a chess soldier, breathlessly erect, in shade or crossing sunlight without hours, from clay to clay and odiously strict. If vows were visible, they might see ours as changeless chessmen in the changing light, on the lawn outside where the bannered beakers toss, and the palms gust with music that in times above the chessman's silence. Motion brings loss, a sable blackbird twitters in the limes.
Nick, this is not the usual question we start with, but what do you see in your mind when you read it?
I think there are several things that he's doing. So the first thing is he's taken us to the grave. So it's like he brings something back to life. And it's another culture. So we are a Western culture going into an Eastern culture, but there is no need for translation. We are totally transported there. That's part of the magic of it. So the chessmen, that is something that you can, as a Westerner, can identify. But it becomes a metaphor for the terracotta soldier. And it's that sense of purpose. He's talking about war, or the need for war, or the need for protection. But, you know, it's not grandiose. It's subtle. You know, and then the other magic of it is that it's a sonnet.
Yeah.
But it's very conversational.
Yeah.
And in his lens, the way he's making us look at this world, it's like a camera moving, looking around at these soldiers who are protecting the emperor. The title of the whole collection, which is White Egrets, which somehow makes you think of with regret. So there's this kind of melancholy of looking back at things, or looking up as well. This, you know, I realized somebody said about architects. The thing about buildings, people never look up. You never see the beauty of things. And I think when poetry is at its best, it makes people look up from their existence into another existence. And I think that's what this poem does.
That's amazing. How long have you been friends with this poem, as it were, or when did you first meet it?
I mean, I've always liked Derek Walcott, but I think, to me, this is probably the most perfect collection. Even though it is a book of poems, it actually reads more like a novel. And the thing is, I'm always skeptical of my idols. Barack Obama, president, was he really that good? 2 terms, whatever. That's just me. I question everything. So Michael Jordan, 6 rings. Was he really that good? You know, but the flip side of that is that I almost worship them. You know, like, so I don't want to admit that, wow, damn, you're good. I think this is the one book that I read cover to cover, but it took me ages just to get past this first poem.
So tell me more about that. What was happening?
So first I read it out in my head. That's really good. I was like, wow. And then I read it again. I was like, wow, this is really good. It was so good, I had to call my friend. I said, have you read this poem? I said, amazing. Because I like to read a poetry collection in one sitting, because then you know its weight. But I couldn't even get past it. I just kept, you know, it's almost like when you're a kid and you play a CD and you have it on loop. I literally had this on loop. You know, and then you see the rhyme scheme, because I didn't even know it was rhyme. At first I just thought, oh, look, it's rhyming. Because you're not really thinking about that. You're so into the narrative.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's working on a sonic scale. It's working on a narrative scale. It's working on, you know, a lyric scale. So I was just like, wow, he's doing it all. Like I was like, how's he doing it all in one poem? Yeah. And it's almost effortless. So he's not drawing you to the rhyme. The rhyme is not dominant.
Yeah.
That means that's mastery. You know, and I think that's what it was. I was just aware that here was someone in full flight.
I love that idea of it being on a loop, or wanting it on a loop.
Yeah. Something I realized that, you know, poems are designed for rereading, but really good poems force that. Not in a bad way, not like it's twisting my arm, but it's that good. A good poem should take you outside of yourself.
I love that thing you've said there about being outside of ourselves.
I struggled with, in writing, putting my collection together, I struggled with the sense of what I'm writing about is a Ugandan experience, but people aren't from Uganda. So how would they want to know that? You know, but then again, I also struggle with, I have a Western experience. So how is my Western experience filtering the Ugandan experience? So there's this liminal space that exists. And I'm like, how can I enter that liminal space which gives me more freedom, which gives me more insight? So, you know, you experience it when people who are travelers, they travel around the world, they've been to city, they see more of a society than the people who live in that city their whole life. That's the position that Derek Walcott has. He can take you to a place, but at the same time, he can make you feel that you are part of that place. I think this is the power of this poem.
The thing that I'm hooking into is this shift in perspective in it. So the bringing back to life of the terracotta warriors, lifted up, presented out. And then this line, if vows were visible, they might see ours as changeless chessmen in the changing light. I'm trying to work out what's going on with that shift. I'm trying to work out who we are, I guess.
I can't be certain, but I think he's been there. I think that's what that is about. My friend says to me, you should always have you in the poem, or the sense that the reader can feel that they are in the poem. So with that, what he's doing is he's allowing us to be close to the existence of this world. A poet's mind is to observe and to notice things that most people do not notice, or things that people might just recognize, is to give them new light. The magic of it is that in one line he's taken us across the world. The chessmen are as rigid on their chessboard as those life-size terracotta warriors whose vows to their emperor with bridal that, like, the whole thing is one sentence.
Yeah.
I just love that idea of if vows were visible. I mean, that is enough to keep me going for a few days, you know? Do you remember whether that was particularly provocative for you?
For me, because I chase a poem line by line. So what makes a poem good to me is that, gosh, how many good lines you got in here? The chessmen are as rigid as their chessboard. That's a good line. Going back to your line, if vows were visible, they might see ours. I mean, each one of these lines could be a first line of a poem. Because usually what you do, you have your best lines at the top, you have some okay lines in the middle, something nice, and then you rush out of the poem. That's how most people write poetry. But this one here, like the last line, you could start a poem with that. A sable blackbird twitters in the limes.
Fantastic line.
I'm not surprised that you're arrested by that line. Everyone will have their own line that they're arrested by. But what arrests me is that each one works to a different sense. You know, so you can feel the cold on your face at times. You can feel the stare of these terracotta men. You know, the sense of their vow. That means he even takes you back in time. Which is another thing that a poem does. It moves you across time.
It moves so much. He has transported us through time and place, but it also stands so still, doesn't it? It's so present.
What you're saying there is that we are arrested by our gaze. So even though everything is moving, we are seeing what he's seeing in its stillness, because there's not much movement. These are still soldiers, and that's what he's observing, but that's what he wants you to notice. It's awesome just to see all those soldiers standing there. I've never been there. I want to go there just to get that sense of quality, that sense of what he feels. But the poem does it for me. It's weird because recently I've had this strange thing where poems move me almost emotionally. Yeah. Like to tears or to joy or to hope. I'm like, wow, how's it doing that? Because I did not give you permission to access my emotion, but the words are doing that.
I was literally just about to ask you how you felt. I was literally just about to say, what were the feelings?
Yeah, I was moved. I think because I bought the book and I read it that night, and I couldn't get past the poem, and I remember crying twice, and I was like, wow. I don't know. He's like my big brother, or dad, or poet uncle, or something like that. So. It's almost like when somebody tells you a secret and you understand it, and you're like, how do I understand that? I don't know if I'm making sense. I think what it is just how they move you through the world. You know, because if you allow people, they will just keep on doing what they always do every day. I'll have my coffee, I'd like to meet my friends, call my mom, or whatever else they do. But how does something move you through the world and then readjust what you thought the world to be? And I think that when you see a poem that can do that, you're like, okay. And the thing is, because this is such a fragile thing to be a poet. It's not, there is no guarantee of anything to be a poet. But when you see something that because this is what you aspire to do as a poet, you're like, why do you write?
That's a beautiful phrase. You know, a poem that strikes you in such a way that it moves you through the world, that it changes your course a little bit, or supports your course, or, you know, It's a big ambition for black and white and paper, you know.
Yeah.
And that's beautifully expressed, and I feel like you've brought us this poem that's about death and giving your life up for something.
Mm.
You said that you cried, and I wonder whether, I don't know, whether there's something of feeling of kinship or something.
I think, well, this is what I know. I can't speak for anyone else, but I know when you're writing at your best, you're at your most vulnerable. I admire his vulnerability, because he's talented. He was talented from 17. You know, he's been talented his whole life, but he came to success late. So this is a person constantly working at their craft, mastery. There's a lot to be admired in that. So as a young poet, you know, a lot of times you can rely on what you think is your ability. What you get here is somebody who's diligently working at their craft. And it's inspiring. I guess that's what it is.
And moving.
And moving, yes.
And I don't know as much as I should know about the terracotta warriors, and I haven't seen them. But they are models of the army that were made as a kind of memorial.
I think it's the burial ground of the emperor. And they're there to, if I'm right, they're there to protect him.
Right.
In this life and the next.
I mean, that's the thing about the
Space.
liminal space between culture, but there's also the liminal space between the living and the dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's describing this very visceral, pledging your skin, flesh, heart, blood for war, but then made into clay and kind of protected from that in a kind of... I'm just with this very short line down here of motion brings loss.
Motion brings loss, yeah. There is always a geography to a poem. So where are we, where are they?
Yeah.
But I think part of that stillness is actually to... A lot of times people journey out, but you know, some of the journey is the journey in. Who are we? You know, like how do you lift yourself up out of your consciousness? It's the question of identity. Like, who do we belong to? Who do we say that we are?
Changeless chessmen in the changing light. Identity, who do we belong to? I mean, there's a whole thing here as well, isn't there, about these terracotta warriors who gave their oath to this emperor, and then this kind of... And there's no emperor in the second part, and yet some sense of us being... Yeah, who are we giving ourselves to? It's just interesting to use the word. That question, who do we belong to, is something that you mentioned there.
A human being always questions himself. Wherever we place ourselves in our level of confidence, and I think what this poem does very well is it starts with a figure that's quite strong, the chess hard game, thinker's game, terracotta warriors, strong, whatever, but it's actually asking quite vulnerable questions. I think that's when a poem is at its best, is when it gives you something, you know, it's quite difficult to comprehend, but actually is going underneath, you know, is digging a bit deeper. It's like making the perfect sponge. You know what I mean? Like everyone can make it, just put that together, but like sometimes you have, it's a bit dry, it's too sucky. But when you get, you know, like, wow, that's how you do it. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but
And some of that, you know, depends on the temperature of the day and the...
You can't control the elements, but it's like there's something he's doing. Like imagine that. The first cake he gives us is like, it's come out really well.
Yeah. So we have this question of the poem that's been a friend to you. What kind of friendship would you say this is? You probably every now and then choose to go and reread it, do you? Or
there's not even every now and again. Whatever I'm doing, most times, whatever I'm struggling, that is the poem I'll go to.
Right.
Because it does everything. And I think it's the kind of friend is it's honest with you. So you know that friend who'll tell you, you know what, you are out of order, or you're not working hard enough, or keep going. It's almost like a tuning fork. that kind of friend that's a tuning fork. That when they you're like, okay, I'm back in the room.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times being a poet and taking yourself seriously as a poet, you can have so many unnecessary thoughts. But when you read that poem, it really centers what being a poet's about. It's about reading good work, writing good poetry. Reading good work, writing good poetry. Putting your best foot forward, giving your best work. And I think that is how Derek Walcott, just as a writer, but particularly with this poem, I find it encouraging. And, if I was honest with you, like, there were many times I didn't want to finish my collection, wanted to give up writing, and that poem probably came at a time as a form of encouragement.
Lovely.
And I think that was really big for me, because you have all these rules in your head. I can't do this because of that. I don't understand this because of that. He was like, well, I've just done it. And he's not pretentious about it. He's not boasting.
No.
He's not saying, look how great Derek Walcott is. What he's saying is, let me take you to these chessmen.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing.
White Egrets 1. The chessmen are as rigid on their chessboard as those life-size terracotta warriors whose vows to their emperor with bridle, shield and sword were sworn by a chorus that has lost its voice. No echo in that astonishing excavation. Each soldier gave an oath, each gave his word to die for his emperor, his clan, his nation, to become a chess soldier, breathlessly erect in shade or crossing sunlight, without hours, from clay to clay, and odorlessly strict. If vows were visible, they might see ours as changeless chessmen in the changing light, on the lawn outside where bannered breakers toss and the palms gust with music that is times above the chessmen's silence. Motion brings loss. A sable blackbird twitters in the limes.
That, of course, was Fiona with the gift reading at the end there. Our thanks go to Nick for giving us his time and for so patiently waiting to hear the results of that conversation and for allowing us to share it with you. Our thanks also to Faber and Faber for giving us permission to use that incredible poem. The collection itself by Derek Walcott is called White Egrets 1, and I would really encourage you to seek it out. It's every bit as good as Nick tells us. I just loved hearing Nick's enthusiasm for that poem and for Derek Walcott and his craft and how inspiring that's been to him. I find that very inspiring myself. I hope to see some of you on Wednesday the 26th at the Bedford in Balham at 7:30 and to feel the presence of others of you that will be watching online to hear readings and celebrate Fiona's collection. Speaking of which, I thought it might be nice to finish with a poem from Fiona's collection, On the Brink of Touch. And this one struck me as being appropriate for this month's episode as it features similar themes to those that we discussed, movement and stillness, and it also features a statue. This is Motion by Fiona Bennett. A single swan riding the current backwards quickens your pace. A bee retreating from the tunnel of a foxglove arouses your sex. In the woods, the hawk's eyes hurry you into the clearing. The rock in the granite mountain is singing. All is in motion. The sculptor knew the gesture she carved would live and die again and again on the inhalation of each viewer's breath. In the high wall surrounding the gardens of the Palace Real Alcazar, there is a small figurine, a plump little cherub, perched in an alcove all his own. His left hip tips away from his body, a seductive invitation, and he flings his two chubby arms high above his head in exasperation. Fixed in stone, yet still his pulse of blood comes alive inside you as you glance up to reply, "I know. I know." Then, walking on, turn to blow him a consoling kiss. That's about all we've got time for this month. We'll be back with you next month with more Poems as Friends. Until then, thank you for listening.